Now, to open our programming, we're so honored to welcome someone who truly embodies the power of the patient voice. Dr. Neena Nizar lives with an ultra-rare skeletal condition. Her 2 sons do too. When she learned her condition had no treatment and hardly any research, she didn't wait for someone else to step in. She became that someone. She founded the Jansen's Foundation, which has since catalyzed new research, industry partnerships, and patient-led change. Her lived experience has shaped policies, research agendas, and even the way biotech companies approach drug development. Neena's story reminds us that even in the smallest disease communities, our voices, when used with courage, can move mountains. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Neena Nizar.
Thank you so much to Ada for welcoming me here today. So Ada's story is very similar in many ways, ultra-rare disease, and what it means to develop a treatment or find your voice in a world that doesn't really see you or doesn't even regard you. So I thought when Ada said, we really need somebody to come and talk to our audience, and I said, I'd be happy to share my story because there's so many similarities. Many of you have seen me yesterday, and I led a few focus groups yesterday. And as I sat through the focus groups, I was just thinking about my own journey, and there's so many similarities. Yes, I don't have ZTTK, but I do have an ultra-rare disease, and so I can absolutely relate to many of you in this room. So what is my story? What does that look like when you have an ultra-rare disease? And so I'll take you right to the beginning of things. So I was born in the Middle East, in Dubai, long ago. I won't give you the exact age, but I will tell you that at the time there was no Google. There was nothing around. It wasn't like the Dubai you Google right now and you see all the tall towers. And I had a condition that no one understood. And at the time, there were no expert opinions, and the only thing that the doctors could tell my parents was, there's something wrong with her, but we don't know what. So I was misdiagnosed, like many ultra-rare diseases and many rare diseases. In fact, it can take up to 8 doctors before you can get a diagnosis, and sometimes it can take between 7 to 10 years to even get a diagnosis. And for me, it took 32 years. And so I had my earliest memories were of my father tying me to an ironing board. I must have been 6 because he said her bones are bending, and in order to keep her straight, we have to keep her flat. And nobody would believe him. And he was an engineer, and he thought, we got to find a solution to this. And he would do everything in his power to find solutions because no one believed him, no one would help him, and he had no answers. So as my father would say, you're going to go get an education. And at that time, there were no accessible schools. And my father carried me 2 flights of stairs all through my schooling. And he said, no, you will get an education and you will go to a regular school. And I did. And as I grew up, not knowing what I had, people said I had rickets, then I had a misdiagnosis. So plenty of misdiagnoses later. They also, and I had 32 surgeries growing up. So most of my life was spent pretty much sick or in hospital. But, my father, and I had 2 siblings, and he treated me like he treated the other siblings, and he ensured I would live the best possible way I could. And later on, of course, as many of you shared yesterday, what would the future look like? Will my child, lead a normal life? Will he get married? Will he have children? So similarly, my father and my family had similar thoughts. And of course, when you live with a disability, the first thing people decide is, yes, you will not get married, and yes, you will not have children. And I honestly thought probably that is going to be true. But, life has different ways. And, sometimes there are powers greater than you that decide a different fate. And so I did get married. And then, of course, when I did get married, what do people tell you? Oh, you'll never have children. And if you do have children, you're probably going to die. Your child will die. And these were the things that were said to me. But in the Christmas of 2009, I did have a boy. And at the time, he was nothing like me. He had no sign of disease. There was absolutely nothing wrong with him. He was 9 pounds. And when I did give birth, and I gave birth in South India, and I still remember everyone coming into the hospital to see the little lady with the big baby. And again, no sign of disease. 2 years later, I had another child. And at that time, my world collapsed. Like Ada said, the ground shifted. And when my second son was born, and we called him Jahan, which is Persian for Savior, the world, because he came with a diagnosis. He came with more distinct features of an ultra-rare condition. And we eventually, after 32 years, we got a diagnosis. And I always tell the diagnosis story because it's very important. We had absolutely given up hope of getting a diagnosis. And we had gone all over the world, and we had sent x-rays to so many people, and everybody came back saying, we don't know what you have. And this one doctor, a geneticist in the South India, who sees the most complicated cases, we went to see her because my father said, we're going to see this doctor. He found it in a newspaper, and he cut it out, and he told me, we're going to go see her. And I was probably 7 months pregnant, and I still remember I traveled 7 hours and waited in her waiting room for 5 hours before I saw her. And the minute I walked in, the doctor said, I know what you have, because she was able to see Jahan's x-rays, and she was able to know right off the bat what it was. And this was the time before whole exome sequencing. She made a clinical diagnosis based on an x-ray. And she called her professor in Germany, and she said, and her professor had taught this skeletal dysplasia class maybe 10, 15 years ago, and the professor had shown a slide of our disease to the class and said, we're going to skip this slide because you're never going to come across a patient with Jansen's. So she called her professor, who had retired, and said, I don't have one, I have 3 patients with Jansen's. And of course, he was stunned, and our blood was sent to a doctor in MGH, who then diagnosed us. And at that time, this is my son, he's 2 at the time. This is what the Jansen's bones look like. And if you can see slide D, the picture that was actually a publication, that's again, my little baby. So they were able to diagnose in the womb what Jansen's would look like. And at the time when we got our diagnosis, there were only 30 known patients worldwide. It was autosomal dominant. It was a mutation in the PTH receptor. It caused a series of abnormalities. And the other thing that we found out was I was the only living adult with the condition. So, of course, our wheels got turning. I searched online. There was nothing, no publications. There was one paper about another bone condition that just referenced Jansen's and said, in a very offhanded comment, that we could probably treat Jansen's metaphyseal chondrodysplasia by creating an inverse agonist, a peptide. I cut out the paper, we packed our bags in from Dubai, and we came to the US to find the doctor who wrote the paper. And that's me meeting him for the first time in 2016, and we had come to America in 2015, and he was so shocked. He had been looking into Jansen's for 20 years, but had never met a patient. I was the first patient he met. And then a few months later, I brought my boys to see him. And of course, the first question he asked me is, why are you in a wheelchair? He had been looking at the disease at such a microscopic level and the cells and the structure that he didn't really know what the life of the patients were. He didn't understand how it had impacted my life. And so it changed his whole trajectory of how he looked at the disease. And that's when I formed the Jansen's Foundation, and my mission was to educate the community, the world, about this disease that at the time affected just 3 people, myself and my 2 boys. And we began to find others who were like me. And one of the first things that people told me when I arrived in America, and remember, I knew nothing about the healthcare system. I knew nothing about how to develop a treatment. And I had no idea how I was going to actually raise my 2 boys as well as find a treatment. But I did know that when they told me, there's no way anyone's going to be interested in developing a treatment for 3 people. And I just thought to myself, you know, what he was trying to tell me was, it made sense because economically it's really expensive to develop a treatment. And this was before precision medicine. This was about 10 years ago. 7 years ago, before ideas about precision medicine made sense. And at that time, I thought to myself, he's telling me that my life doesn't matter and the lives of my children don't matter. And something clicked in me, and I was like, that doesn't seem right. It seems very antithetic to what we believe, what life means. Everyone has the right to live and to enjoy what is given around us. And so I thought, no, I'm going to change that narrative. So that's when the foundation was formed. And the very first publication came out the very next year. And all through the literature, it was said that Jansen's could only be diagnosed if you had overt hypercalcemia. I was the first patient that proved that you don't need to have overt hypercalcemia to have Jansen's. And the publication was denied by 3 journals because they said, you're saying something that doesn't make sense. And yet we had to do more convincing, and finally it was published. And that was our first publication. Today we have more than 9 publications for the condition. And so the importance of data, I think you're going to hear a lot in the next 2 days about data. And it is important because in order to understand what Ada said in the introduction is so important, you can't treat what you don't understand. And in order to really make people aware of your disease, you have to start collecting data. We set up the foundation, we found patients across the globe, and then we started publishing the data from those patients. And at the same time, we told the story that the world was not seeing before, how difficult it is to live with the surgeries, how difficult it is for the children to live with pain and be able to still continue their lives. And of course, creating awareness is so important. We knew that no one saw what Jansen's was. We decided to take our story and make sure the globe understood. And so Discovery Channel did a story on the Jansen's Foundation as well as on the disease, so it became a global. We started getting people reach out to us after the story was aired, and we made sure that we put it in front of people. And it's important to share your story because unless you do, people won't see that there is a need. And so, yes, we were in People magazine. My boy was very thrilled, not because of Taylor Swift, but because he was next to Ryan Gosling on the other page. So. And of course, we found warriors around the world, one in each country. And we became what Ada refers to as a global community. But again, you're looking at one person from each country, and our numbers are still very small. So what did we do? We made sure that we got the data from all these patients. We started presenting at different communities. So MGH became our core research team, and they decided that we now had enough data to actually put the hypothesis into practice. And you can see, using my cells and my genes, they developed the first mouse model of Jansen's metaphysical chondrodysplasia for investigating the disease mechanism and to build the first candidate for therapeutic development. And of course they did. And they developed an inverse agonist, like they said in the paper that we had found, that improves the bone parameters of the mice. And this is some of the data that came from there. And so, again, small foundation, no money, no funding. Nobody really wants to fund an ultra-rare disease. And I had no capacity to fundraise when you don't really have a large community or connections. So what I did was I started to write grants. We got 2 R01 grants. And then in the September of 2019, we wrote one of our largest grants, which was the NCATS TRND grant, which gave us the funding to put the translational science into the lab. And we started the first natural history study for Jansen's in 2023, and we were the first patients to be admitted in the NIH. And we brought our first patient from Brazil. Our first international patient came down to the NIH to give her data. And the mission of our foundation is similar to any ultra-rare foundation's mission. We need to find a treatment. We need to be able to change the narrative of even a smallest population to be able to find the funding, find the necessary approvals, and start the first testing of a disease-modifying peptide. And this is our journey to treatment, starting in 2017, when the foundation was formed. We got the R01 grants. We got the natural history study. And today, in a few months, we will have the first ever in-human clinical trial for Jansen's disease. And I am the N of 1 that will be the first adult to be in trial. And is it a cure? No. But is it a treatment? Yes. It is hope when there was none. And that is the important takeaway. And you must be thinking, how do we cure everything? And I wish we had a magic wand and we could do that. But every step forward is improvement. It's improvement in understanding, because 10 years from now, the disease won't look the same. And that's the change we need to see. So what are some of the lessons? And I wanted to share this because what did I learn on my journey? In ultra-rare diseases, my data isn't just important, it's irreplaceable. Data is really important. So you have many opportunities to share your data at the conference here, and keep connecting with sharing your data. Things that you feel are small or insignificant, or things that you feel are your everyday, are really crucial data points. I realized that by sharing my story, I was helping define this disease itself. This is really empowering. When you think, what can I do? What is my story? What is everyday mean? And it's bigger than your family. It's bigger than what's happening in your room. You have to be able to understand that this is what's defining the disease, and that is important. And only I can describe what the disease feels like day to day. And you'll hear about the focus groups and getting involved in sharing that information. So patient-reported outcome measures turn that into evidence. So what I feel every day living with my disease, unless I'm able to capture that as an outcome measure that can then be used for evidence, it then becomes only mine and it's isolated. So we need to be able to describe what that feels. And again, I will never underestimate my impact, my story, or what's happened to me or my children. There is impact in every story. And I am patient, but I'm persistent. And that's the other thing. Things won't happen overnight, but unless you take that step forward and make it matter, then that step matters. And so sometimes, of course, there's a lot of hurdles that you've got to get through, but you have to stay the course. And in my story, we were really hopeful that it would help my kids. But what I realized today is that that's probably not going to happen, and I have to be okay with that. Because what it means is you're helping the next generation, the others who get a diagnosis of ZTTK, or they have a sunshine. You then know that somehow your life did impact that diagnosis. And so you have to be okay with that. And I support my community because we can only do this together, like Ada said. One person alone is not important. My data is important, but when it combines with everyone's data, we have a huge picture that we can paint. So people talk about hope, but hope must be more than just a feeling. It must move us. It must move us to act, and it must shape the narrative for our kids. I don't want my children to have the next generation and not have the power to decide what they want to do. So I want to equip them with as much understanding of the disease so that they can make their decisions. I did not have the information at the time, and now I know that we can become change makers by moving hope into action. My kids love dressing up as superheroes, and so I always end with this and I think this quote is really important, and I love this quote because it really shows that if you have a group of really dedicated individuals, even a small group, they can change the world. If it's the world of ZTTK, if it's the world of Jansen's, you are able to impact that. And I think the conference is a testimony to that power. So, never doubt yourself and that you're capable of changing the trajectory of this disease. So thank you very much. If there are any questions.
Yeah, we have a few minutes for questions.
Thank you very much for today. It sounds like you were going to be the first patient in the clinical trial. Are you nervous? What are you expecting? Like, I'm just thinking of our children and like hoping that one day we get there. Like, I don't know how to feel.
It's a great question. I think somebody else asked me yesterday when they heard that. I've been waiting 32 years for this moment. So I don't have really, I don't have time to be nervous. And I think that I've sort of in my mind accepted that whatever is the outcome, it will give us data to build on. So it's not going to be the end all of where we will be. I'm already thinking about the next steps. I'm already thinking about, this is a peptide, and can we develop a molecule? This is a twice daily injection. Can we develop a molecule? Can we find a cell and gene therapy? Ultimately, we never looked at rare bone conditions as being good candidates for gene therapy. So the science around us is moving so fast. What was available 7 years ago when we started isn't the biotech world that we are in today. The science has progressed so quickly. So as I'm getting ready to be in the trial, I'm already thinking about the next steps, and my brain is not shutting down. So I don't have time to be nervous because I know that no matter what comes from this, we would have made progress. 30 patients worldwide, no understanding of the disease, and in 7 years we have a clinical trial. So it has made so much progress. We have, over 15 publications today on Jansen's alone, and the Jansen's disease publications have now unleashed understanding for kidney disease as well as the regulation of bone in your body. So it makes you understand osteoporosis, osteoarthritis, so many benefits from just the work we've done. So do I feel nervous? I'm not. I'm actually, I'm really ready for it to see what's the next step. But that's a great question.
We can take one more question. All right.
Thank you so
She'll be around.
Oh.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for sharing your personal life story. I was just wondering about the age when it comes to trials as well, because I know a lot of diseases, when we do find, in fact, a cure, usually some patients who are older might not be applicable for such a treatment. And let's say if we do find something for ZTTK syndrome, would you say age might kind of like possibly come, like, as a something like a yeah,
like a barrier?
Yeah, basically something like that.
So age is the important, so for us, many of our patients are children right now. I'm the only adult. Will it have a benefit on me? So I'll give you my example. Will it have a benefit on me? Probably not. But it will give the scientists and the researchers data that is valuable for understanding how it will treat the children early on. So our understanding is that even in the preclinical data, it shows that the twice daily injection, even as a newborn, would stop some of the bone from being so deformed, for the lack of another word. And so it would reduce the number of surgical interventions. So for an adult, will it change what has happened to me? No. So it really depends on the kind of treatment that we're looking for. ZTTK, from what we are understanding from just the focus group, there's such a huge range, and you'll hear more about it. But it really depends, because even if you're an adult, most trials start with an adult. The regulators want to see, improvement in adults before they go into children. So, and what benefits that may have. You can also have pediatric trials, but it depends really on the trajectory. But I can understand that, sometimes when you have adults, you feel, well, it's not going to benefit me or my adult, but that's the wrong mindset. I think that there's so much value in being still a part of it, because what you have experienced as an adult, the children are just beginning to go through that, right? So that gap has to be bridged by understanding the adult experience, which we heard even from the focus groups yesterday. There's such a variation. And so, and if I thought that my kids who are, my oldest one is now 17, is probably not going to see much benefit from this treatment because he's almost an adult now. But at the same time, will it preserve his kidneys? Yes. Most of the children and adults from this disease passed away from kidney failure. So if we can figure out a way to preserve the kidneys in the adults, that's huge for our community. So I think it's about the perspective of how you want to, what it is you would want to see from it, and how it may still improve the quality of life for your adult in some way. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Let's give Dr. Neena Nizar another round of applause. Thank you. So thank you so much again, Dr. Neena Nizar, for reminding us that our stories, our voices are powerful instruments of change.